Okay, so I got another thought experiment for you, and this one serves a very similar purpose as my many Beths in one thought experiment, but it's a bit different. I figure, oh, okay. This is Bob has cancer. So Bob has cancer, and Bob lives several thousand years in the future, and it's about at the same time when Beth lived. But Bob doesn't like having cancer, and it's a brain tumor, so he's really not doing great. So what Bob does is he uses the similar technology that the Beths had from my Beth thought experiment to grow a clone of himself, a perfectly healthy clone of himself, and he uploads his memories into his clone, and then he gets a machine to euthanize himself in his sleep, and he wakes up again in what he perceives as his new body. As far as he's concerned, he just went to sleep, then woke up again, and some would say that he died and he's a new Bob, but I frankly don't see why. So that's one of the Bobs. There's a second Bob too, and he also has cancer, and he makes another clone of himself, but he ends up surviving the cancer. He doesn't kill himself. He tries to he makes the clone as a backup with his memories, but he just wants to kind of die naturally if it comes down to it, and he never dies. He survives the cancer. He gets chemotherapy and such, and or whatever. However they treat brain tumors, that chemotherapy may not be the way, but he does that and he survives it, and so now there are two Bobs that began with the same memories, and they have basically the same memories. They will diverge into progressively more different people over time, but they started out identical, and they become the best of friends. They like playing chess together. They have a whole lot in common. So Bob figures this is a good deal. And then they just kind of they live on until one of them dies first. So here's a question. Does the second Bob, the still living Bob, does the Bob who died, does he live on to the still living Bob? In this case, we're talking about their minds diverging into different sorts of personalities over many years, if not decades. I would definitely say that in the first scenario, Bob lived on through the clone, because their minds were nearly identical. In this case, I'd say it would be much more reasonable to say no. So then there's a third Bob. Bob again has cancer. He makes his clone. He dies of cancer. And the clone realizes, I want more people to play chess with. I'm going to make my own clone. And then, he makes a clone. So now there are two Bobs, just not done to survive, not done to prolong either one's life. It's just he wants to play chess. And then they decide they also want to have a baseball team because they don't know anyone who likes to play baseball. So they make 9 Bob clones with the same memories. Well, with about half of them have the memories of the first Bob, and half have the memories of the second Bob. But they do this recently enough, within a few days of when the Bobs were cloned, so they have very similar memories to start off with. And now they have a baseball team, and one of the Bobs during a pitch is killed. So here's a question: Does that Bob live on through many different Bobs, or is he just dead? Have the Bobs died? Have, there's another Bob as well in an alternate universe. And this Bob, again, he has cancer. And, he makes a clone as a kind of cure to the cancer. And he, his clone, he dies, and then the clone survives it. And, but then he realizes, cancer's not the only threat out there. He could get hit by a car or whatever futuristic space flying car exists at the time. He could have a heart attack or something. So he makes another clone of himself as a backup just in case. This one's sentient too. It has all his memories. So that if one of the clones dies, the other one can live on through the living clone. They can still live on through the dead clone can live on through the living clone. And then what happens is a few months go by, and they realize their personalities start to diverge away from each other a bit more. And they start thinking, I don't think this person seems too different from me. I don't think I'd be living on to this person if I died. Excuse me. So then, both these clones each make a new clone with their memories so that they can have somebody live on through if they die. Right? And then next, these 4 clones, after a few months, they decide they need more clones to live on through. They each need their own clone, because it's not really you. You're not really living on to the person if the person has significantly different thoughts than you, right? Or at least that's their view. And then this goes along for quite some time with the clones doubling in number every few months until there is an entire planet of Bob clones. And it just keeps on replicating until there are trillions of Bobs. And then finally there's a Bob, and he has cancer, and he considers making a clone of himself. And he just figures, that sounds too complicated. I'm just going to die of cancer. That sounds fine with me. So my question is, who is the most rational person here? And again, like with the Beth experiment, I think this illustrates that individuality is a much more foggy concept than we tend to think of it as, and death is as well. This is not really... It's a simpler thought experiment than the Beth thought experiment. That the many bets in one thought experiment was something I thought up personally. I'm kind of proud of that, but this is kind of too simple to really be mine exclusively. Anyway, that's all. I